Welcome to our presentation on modal verbs, or modals, as we often call them. Well, what is a modal verb? Well, basically, these are verbs that use an infinitive to complete their meaning. They use the infinitive form of a verb to complete their meaning. Now, we have these verbs in English also. For example, I need to read the newspaper. To read would be an infinitive. In English, they often have a to in front of them, though they don't always. And need would be a modal verb. It's a verb that uses an infinitive to complete its meaning. I need a newspaper would be different. It wouldn't mean the same thing as I need to read the newspaper. Some other common modal verbs are things like can, like I can read. In that case, can implies ability, but the infinitive read there completes its meaning. So a modal verb is a verb that uses an infinitive to complete its meaning. We're going to look at two common verbs in Dutch that are modal verbs. And the first one is Missa, Missa. Sometimes in a dictionary, you'll see the past participle given as gemist. You're never going to encounter that past participle. 90 out of 100 times, the past participle you're going to see is Missa, Missa, Missa. To be required is how I've translated here, but we often just translate that as must or as have to, like I have to do something. In English, we say that. All these things will be translated as using the verb missa, missa in Dutch. Let's look at the forms quickly. Ich muss, du musst, muss, sie muss, es muss, ma missa, dir misst, sie missa. You'll notice that these modals tend to be irregular, as in this case. They're not incredibly irregular. They're not crazy forms like du musst. It has the ending st like you'd expect, but they are irregular, often different kind of vowels between the singular and the plural. So you just have to learn them. Another very common and very useful modal verb is Kenna, Kenna, which means to be able. So in dictionaries, once again, you'll see the past participle gekent, and you will never meet that. So you should learn it as Kenna, Kenna, to be able. Now, we often say in English, we often say can, or in the past tense of this verb, we might say could. So be willing to translate this in various ways. Let's look at the forms of Kenna, Kenna. Once again, they're slightly irregular. Ich kann, du kannst, er kann, sie kann, es kann, man kenne, dir kennt, sie kenne. So those are the forms of to be able to do something, or to someone can do something. So let's think about word order of these mobile clauses. The important thing to know is that the infinitive goes to the end of the clause. The infinitive goes to the end. So in a verb like machen, gemacht, which means to make or to do something, machen is the infinitive. Remember, in these dictionary forms, the first form given is, in most dictionaries, is the infinitive. So in machen, gemacht, machen is the infinitive. So in a simple sentence like this one, muss sel machen, that means he must make it, or he has to make it. You can see the subject comes first, he, then the modal, muss, then everything else, in this case sel, which means that, and then our infinitive comes, mache, to make. Muss sel machen. The infinitive goes at the end. The modal verb goes where you kind of expect it to be. Now in English we don't do this. We put the infinitive right after the modal, right? We would say he must make it. We'd have the modal must, and we'd have the infinitive make. But in Dutch, that infinitive goes to the end, right? Muss sel machen. Literally, translating like in the English word order would be he must that make. The infinitive goes to the end. Now you can see how this modal form of word order is quite similar to the past tense we've already learned. So amos sel maha is kind of like the past tense of he made that. That would be hat sel gemacht. Literally, he has that made. You can see once again the kind of main verb, whether it's a modal or whether it's a helping verb, the mus or the hat is in that second position. So it goes subject, then modal or helping verb, then everything else, and then the infinitive is at the end in the case of modals, or the past participle is at the end in the case of regular past tense. And this brings us to a general principle. There will be many exceptions, as always, to general principles, but it's still very useful to know and to remember, and that is that infinitives and past participles go to the end. Remember that. Infinitives and past participles go to the end. And that is an important thing to remember about German and Pennsylvania German word order. Infinitives and past participles go to the end. So this leaves only one kind of verb that we've seen that doesn't go to the end, and that would be the present tense. Whether they're regular present tenses like ich schwätz, I speak, or whether they're helping verbs like ich bin, I am, or ich hab, I have. Those present tenses in a regular sentence don't go to the end, but infinitives, past participles, they go to the end. Here's another example, just to get practice with modal word orders. Ich kann sel Buch verstehen. This is from the verb verstehen, verstehen, to understand. Verstehen would be the infinitive, is the first form given, verstehen. And as we know, the infinitive goes to the end. Ich kann sel Buch verstehen. I can understand that book, or in the translating literally into English, I can that book understand. But of course, in speaking English, we put the modal infinitive next to each other. I can understand that book. In Dutch, infinitive, like the past participle, goes to the end. But what happens now when the modal itself is in the past tense? Let's say we wanted to say something like, she had to make it. She had to make it. That's our kind of past tense of have to do something. She had to make it, or it was necessary for her to make it. We don't have a good way of making modals in the past tense often in English. Well, it's actually very much like a regular old past tense, right? We know that past participles go to the end. So the modal past participle will go to the end. So our word order here would be sie hat sel mache Missa. Literally, she has that make must past participle, right? Our past participle of Missa, which happens to be Missa, goes to the very end. Mind you, our infinitive is still kind of at the end, but the past participle goes to the very end. So our infinitives and past participles to the very end. Sie hat sel mache Missa. She had to make that. Here's another example. Wir haben sel Buch verstehen können. That means we could understand that book, or we were able to understand that book. Wir haben sel Buch verstehen können. Once again, the past participle of Kenna, to be able, is Kenna. That's the past participle. And it's gone to the very end. Mind you, the infinitive is also at the end. Verstehen is also at the end, but the past participle is at the very end. Wir haben sel Buch verstehen können. So that's how we form the past tense of modal verbs. Very much like all other verbs, we just use a helping verb, like ich hab. We put the past participle at the very end. Wir haben sel Buch verstehen können. Let's look at some vocabulary. Our vocabulary in this unit mostly deals with animals. So the word for animal is es Gedier, Gediere. Remember, the first form is the singular, so it would be the animal. And the second form, Gediere, is animals. Es Gedier, Gediere. Der Gaul, Geil. That's that's a horse. De gal, geil. De horse, hossa, rabbit. Don't confuse that with some kind of, I don't know, country western pronunciation of horse. If you're hearing a word that sounds like horse, it's probably horse, and it means rabbit. De horse, hossa. A farmer is de bouwer, bouwere. De bouwer, bouwere. Pig, die sow, saai. Die sow, saai. Our farm is die bouwerij. In this case, the U almost gets pronounced like a V. Die bouwerij, bouwerijen. Die bouwerij, bouwerijen. Chicken, es hinkel, hinkel. Es hinkel, hinkel. Some verbs that are useful around the farm. Fiedre, kfide. That means to feed. Fiedre, kfide. To milk is melke, gmolke. Melke, gmolke. To ride, ride, grydde. Ride, grydde. We've already encountered this verb, must or have to, or is necessary. Missa, missa. To be able or can is Kenna, Kenna. And here's an old saying, de horse hocht in peffer. And it kind of means there's a problem, or there's a serious problem going on. Literally means the rabbit sits, hocht means to sit, in the sweet and sour sauce. Pfeffer means pepper, literally, but it referred to in the 19th century, there was a kind of, well, essentially a sweet and sour sauce, not Chinese style, but it had vinegar in it and it had sugar in it. Or wine would be a nicer form than having just vinegar. And that was called pfeffer. And people would basically make a rabbit stew in this sauce. In fact, sometimes they would have fancy dishes with a kind of a shape of a rabbit on the lid to make this stew. De horse hocht in peffer. So that literally means the rabbit is in the sweet and sour sauce. It's similar to our phrase in English, the goose is cooked, but it's perhaps that it kind of has a real finality to it, whereas de horse hocht in peffer, you might be able to escape from that. De horse hocht in peffer. Not some. This is an old phrase, so a lot of people don't know this particular one, but it's a really cute one and it involves animals. De horse hocht in peffer. Okay, that's everything for this unit. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something. Mach's gut.